Hello everybody. Today we're going to be looking at small group communication and the importance of small group communication. In this section we'll be talking about the importance of small group communication and some of the theories so that we can become better adapted at small group communication. As we begin this session, I'd like to start with a very short story for you this morning. A few years ago, I was asked to be on jury duty, and I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience before, but it is something that you probably should experience at some time in the future. The jury was summoned together. We were there on Monday morning and there at 9 a.m. when we were supposed to be there, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were sent up to the courtroom to be selected for part of the jury. And finally, at 6 o'clock in the evening, we were on the jury, but then we had to be there for opening arguments. So this begins with a full day on Monday, full day on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and finally on Friday we were both of the prosecuting team and the plaintiff's team and the defense team closed, and we were given the instruction to deliberate, to do our work as jurors. But something happened on Thursday afternoon. One of the jurors I had noticed was a young man in his mid-20s, and I noticed in the jury room that whenever we would go into the jury room, he sat over there in the corner by himself and didn't talk to anybody for the first day or two, and would pull up a hoodie over his head and fold his arms in front of him and sit back and just sit there. And by Tuesday, Wednesday, he was beginning to open up a little bit and beginning to listen to other people. And Thursday afternoon, we had a very extended break. And he came up to me and he said, "Are you Dr. McPeak?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "I had you for communication class." I said, "You did?" He says, "Yes." And I asked him his name, and I remembered who he was, and he said, "I hated your class." And I said, "Well, why did you hate it?" He says, "Because I hate talking in front of people." And then I realized who he was. He was that same young man that would come into class every day on time. He would sit in the very front of the class. He would pull that hoodie up over his head, fold his arms in front of his chest, stick his legs out, and just sit there. He never ever talked in class. He did his work. He turned his assignments in on time. He was a good student, but he was very quiet in his demeanor. So Friday evening, we are given the opportunity to deliberate, to render our decision. And one of the things that this young man was doing, he was a nurse at the emergency room at a local hospital. And even though the trial did not involve the hospital, what was part of the trial was what takes place in an emergency room. And he was a nurse there. And at one point in the deliberation, people are talking over each other. People are all trying to get attention at the same time. And he started to say something, and right away somebody just shot him down. And I saw, though figuratively, I saw that hood coming back up over his head, the arms folding, the legs sticking out. But when that began to happen, another one of the jurors said very strongly, "Wait a minute. I want to hear what that young man has to say. After all, he is a nurse in the emergency room." And the person sat up, put his hands on the table, looked very assertive, shoulders back, face, head up, and he began to talk. And from that point on, he was at the center of the deliberations. He was right there offering his opinion, offering his ideas, offering his interpretation of information. And so about 9 p.m. on Friday evening, we rendered our verdict. The judge dismissed us, and as we're heading to the elevator, I said to him, I said, "You know, I want to tell you how proud I was of how you handled yourself this evening." I said, "You must have had a good communication instructor." He simply smiled at me got on the elevator, and we left. So what does that have to do with small group communication? Well, groups are everywhere, and groups come together to meet needs. Sometimes those needs are individual needs, sometimes those needs are group needs, or sometimes the needs are outside of the group. Second, groups are important because of inclusion. We want to belong to something. We want to be part of something that is larger than our own selves. We also use groups for affection. We use groups for control. And we also are aware that groups are everywhere. So it may be a jury that you're part of, a 12-person small group, or it may be a work group a task group at work, or it may be an assignment group in a class such as ours. Wherever we go, we're going to be part of a small group. And so as we look at group communication, we want to look at what are some of the group skills that we need. How do we practice effective group skills and that require training? And how do we participate in the democratic process as small groups? I think a jury is really at the heart and core of what democratic process means. We have to make a decision, and we have to render something together as a group. That is our collective identity. So, what is a small group? A small group is defined as the interaction among 3 to 9 people who work together to achieve an interdependent goal. And so these are the characteristics. A group of 3 to 9 people. That number may change a little bit, but it always starts with 3. It's also interaction among others. It's not simply sitting back in the corner and not doing anything, but you have to be part of the group in order for the group to be effective, in order for the group to be successful. And there's that word interdependence, that we rely upon each other to contribute to the process of the whole. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about are the types and functions of small groups. So what are the different types of small groups? Well, the first type of small group is an assigned group. And that's an assigned group. You are very familiar with those. If you have ever taken a college class or a high school class, chances are you've been part of an assigned group. Assigned groups may also happen in the workplace, where you and your coworkers will need to work together on a particular issue, a particular project. The second type of small group are emergent groups. Emergent groups are contrived groups, and they can form spontaneously or form to serve a specific purpose. So, for example, if you think of a group of friends getting together for a social event, or you think of a group of neighbors getting together to help clean up after a storm, those are emergent groups in that they're coming together for a particular purpose. The third type of small group is a task-oriented group, or what we would also call a work group. Again, tied more into the college classroom or into the professional stage. And the fourth type of small group is a relationship group. Groups that we use in order to establish relationships with other people and to maintain and build our relationships with others. The next thing I want to talk about is establishing group culture. And group culture consists of a couple of different things. The first thing are group norms. Group norms are defined as informal rules for groups, for group interaction, created and sustained through communication. Groups develop norms about the structure of meetings, about the content of meetings, and about expected behavior of members. And each group has its own unique culture, even though there may be some overlap and some identity with other groups. They each develop their own group culture. The second aspect of group culture are group roles. And we're going to talk about formal roles, those roles which are positional, or those roles which a person may be appointed to. For example, in a jury, you would have a foreman of the jury. That's a formal role that someone has. But there are also informal roles, and these are roles more of behavioral purposes, rules that govern the behavior. If you go back to what I talked about earlier in that little story, I told you the gentleman that stood up and said, wait a minute, I want to listen to what this young man has to say, was really one of these roles of behavior. He was helping the group to function better. Okay, behaviors that define our roles. We talk about task functions, which we talk about maintenance functions, and we talk about self-centered functions. The first role we want to speak about are group task functions. Task functions help the group to move along in its work together. And you'll see here on this chart there are various different kinds of task functions that you'll need to be familiar with. For example, an initiator is one who may propose goals, may groups or activities, or make plans of action. An informative speaker or an information speaker is one who gathers facts, provides evidence, as well as personal opinions. So these are different functions that happen in group roles, and again, at some point we all play in various functions and various roles. Then we also have maintenance roles. Group maintenance roles are roles that help to maintain the order or help maintain the harmony in the group. So for example, one of the ones that is mentioned here on the chart are tension relievers. These are those who are in the group who employ humor or to reduce formality and to reduce tension in the group. Or there's the encourager. This is the one who praises and supports other group members. Or there is also the harmonizer, who tries to bring back some cohesion to the group itself. The third category are self-centered functions and roles. So here you have a few listed. One is withdrawing, one is blocking, and the third one is who seeks to have status and recognition as part of the group.